after the state's attorney says she will not send the case to the grand jury. Translation, there will be no murder one charge. Out to you, Steve Helling, writer, People magazine. Helling, where is Zimmerman?
We don't know where Zimmerman is, but we know he's far, far away from where I'm standing right now. He's not in Sanford. He's not even in Florida, according to his attorneys.
Out to Daryl Parks joining us. He is the attorney for Trayvon Martin's family. With me, Trayvon Martin's former coach, Carter Eve. And speaking for George Zimmerman, friend and neighbor, Frank Taffy, who has recently spoken with Zimmerman. Weigh in, Daryl Parks. What do you make of the fact that the prosecutor says this is not going to a grand jury? Right there, you know the law as well as I do. In Florida, you got to go to a grand jury for a murder one charge. So no matter what happens, if there's an arrest and a charge, it's not going to be murder one, Daryl Parks.
Well, we always said that we wanted a homicide charge in this case. And clearly, we believe that she's going in that direction. First-degree murder, you're dead right. You have to go to the grand jury to get first-degree murder. But in this case, he can be charged with manslaughter or second-degree murder. And we believe it in our heart of hearts that they are going to charge him with either one of those charges.
All right. Well, what would you say to an involuntary, where you can get probation in a lot of jurisdictions for that?
We don't think that's going to happen here. We think there's a manslaughter charge here. There's a minor involved in this particular case, and that's going to aggravate the situation.
Why don't you think there's a murder one, Parks?
Minor, he's 17. He's an adult.
Excuse me, Taffy. Don't make me cut your mic again, sir. I don't want to. Back to you, Parks. Parks, you know under the law that intent can be formed in the flash of an eye, in the twinkling of an eye. So, in the time it takes to pull a gun and yank the trigger, that's time for intent. So why are you willing to let go of a murder one charge?
Well, I'm not willing to let it go. I think it's clearly from the evidence that she has right now, she could charge right now with manslaughter. She may choose to still go to the grand jury to up the charge.
That's what she said.
That's up to her discretion based on the evidence.
All right. Okay, Taffy, jump in.
Thank you, Nancy. I missed you. I'm glad to be back. Nancy, I spoke with George, and what's compelling of all this is the police report. He shared with me on the phone to stick to the narrative. The officer that was on the scene, if everyone would just take 2 minutes out to get a copy of it and read it, there are 3 very critical lines. In it, he states that the officer states, not George, the officer, that he was within close contact with Mr. Zimmerman that night. It doesn't mean he was afar. It was close contact, where he observed the bloody nose, the bloody back of his head, and the wet
I'm glad
pants
you
in his
said
back.
that, Taffy, because I'm looking at the enhanced video, and if there was a bloody nose, show it, Liz. The enhanced video, I see a perfectly clean
His jacket was zipped
shirt.
up. Thank you. I want to address that. His
No,
jacket
his
was
jacket
zipped up.
is not
I'm glad you
zipped
brought it
up when he walks into the station.
Right.
Liz,
They patted
show
him down.
me the video of him walking in the station. His shirt is clean. Why was he not sent to the hospital, Frank Taffy?
The police report clearly states that the Sanford Fire Department administered first aid to George at the scene of the crime before he was taken into custody and brought down to the station. That is the job of the Sanford Fire Department. It's called care, custody, and control. They took care of him. He was taken into custody, and then the Sanford police maintained their control of him.
Let's go back to Daryl Parks, attorney for Trayvon Martin's family. He is also taking your calls. Mr. Parks, what do you make of the fact that Zimmerman has fled the jurisdiction? He is no longer in the state of Florida.
Well, you know, I would say I'm strongly concerned, but I will tell you that when we had our meeting with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, they told us specifically they knew where he was. So I'm assuming that they have maintained that control and know the whereabouts of George Zimmerman.
And when was that?
That would have been the day of the big rally in Sanford, the first big rally in Sanford, Nancy.
And when was that?
Nancy,
a week ago?
A little over 2 weeks ago. A little over 2 weeks ago.
Whoa, Mr. Parks, put Parks up. Daryl Parks, a lot can happen in 2 weeks. Do you have any idea where he is?
Well, Nancy, if the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, who's involved in this investigation, who tells us 2.5 weeks ago that they know where his whereabouts, they know it's an ongoing investigation.
Lawyers don't know. All right.
Well, they're not the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. They're just some lawyers who say they were retained, so they don't know.
Okay, Mr. Parks, again, on the state's attorney saying this will not go to a grand jury. So Trayvon Martin's family is okay with a lesser charge, that it's not murder one.
I'm not saying we're okay with it. And let me say this here. I think as the facts come out in this here, there may be even some perceived intent. Think about what we know about the 911 tapes. He was following the guy, says he looks suspicious. He says these guys always get away with it. So there's some mens rea here that's being formed. It's quite possible that she could choose to do an upcharge once we get into this case. But right now, we're okay with manslaughter, but there's a possibility it could be upcharged if the evidence is there in this case.
Mr. Parks, have you seen the autopsy report yet?
I have not.